for coming again to the second of our series of Fireside Fridays. Today we are discussing the RPDP, which is the Research Professional Development Plan, which is very useful for our stage one researchers. This is what you do around the transfer stage. In the hot seat today we have Dr. Emer Cunningham from Graduate Studies, and we have hello, and we have Janet Carton there from Graduate Studies as well. Just as the same as last week, what we're doing is recording the first 20 minutes where Janet and Emer will be discussing this. Please keep your chats going in the meantime, and at the end of 20 minutes we will stop the recording and continue for another further 10 minutes with the questions and answers. So thank you, Emer and Janet, and thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ger. I'm really looking forward to this session with Emer to demystify the RPDP, which is an important part of the structured PhD in UCD. So, Emer, that's my very first question. What is the RPDP?
The way I look at it is kind of two elements. At the highest level, what you're doing is you're owning and you're mapping your trajectory throughout your PhD. But it's all encompassing. It's not only the research, but what this will help you do is identify your educational needs, your training needs, and your personal and professional needs as you're going through your program, and documenting those as you go. So there's the aspiration, but then there's the documentation, which is key too. Okay,
and we talk about professional development planning. What is the purpose of that when you're a PhD student?
So the main thing is to, I suppose, keep you focused. There's twofold, because by documenting your needs and the accrual of any skills along the way, it keeps you focused. It keeps you focused on your research. You can identify your short-term goals, your long-term goals, and throughout the program. It also then broadens out the conversation beyond your research project, because obviously you've come onto the program for the research project, and you can be, that's the great thing, you can immerse yourself into that project, which is wonderful. But what it'll broaden out that conversation to say, well, okay, what else do I need? Where do I want to go when I'm finished this project, or when I'm finished my program, so that you're keeping an eye on your career development and any other needs that you may have. So you're enhancing the project as it goes along, but also you're keeping an eye on your career trajectory at the same time.
So it looks like it's really important for a PhD student to keep an eye on their progress with respect to professional development during the PhD. I can see how important it is from what you've highlighted. I can ask you, why is it important, or how important is it for students to actually make a record of these new skills that they're acquiring?
Well, the first thing is that, I suppose, sectorally, both the university sectorally and the employment market, the career market, expect that the person that emerges from their research program is going to be a professional, and that they are going to have accrued skills beyond the understood analytical skills or research skills that they would have accrued in the course of their project. So in doing that, but sometimes I think students don't really appreciate the skills that they are gaining while they are undertaking their project. And so what this will do is allow you to write it down and map it and be aware of it, so that you are aware of the fact that you are becoming a project manager because you're managing your own project, aware of the fact if you're dealing with data, that it's data analytics that you're involved in, that you are a communicator, all of these various skill sets that you are actually gaining in the doing. So it's a matter of annotating that, writing it down, and then you have it there as a record, because when it comes to your career after, you'll often be asked for concrete examples to illustrate any of the skill sets that you have accrued. And so in doing this, it doesn't become then a large onerous task. It's in fact an iterative process, so that you're constantly aware of the skills that you're building up as you go along.
Great, thanks. Just talking about skills, is there any kind of support service in UCD that will help students to identify the skill sets that they either acquire through their research or through their professional kind of development, transferable skills, etc.?
I suppose the first thing is what we use is called the IUA skills statement in terms of the skills, because we're aware of the skills. That this is a kind of where a group of the IUA, the Irish University Association, came together to kind of say, well, what are the skills and attributes that you would expect a research student or a research graduate to come out of the system with? And it's not just the research skills that we would have expected, but they've broadened it out. So what they've actually, it's a kind of a neat little book, but it's often referred, this is what we use as our kind of template when we're thinking about, well, what skills are we talking about here? So we're talking about, obviously, the research skills and awareness, ethics and social understanding. Where is your research placed in the broader picture? You have to understand why it is that you're doing it, and that you're either building on the work of others or whether it's exploring into new territories. So, but the context of it. So that's very, very, important to know. Then also communication skills. There's no real value in you having that research to yourself. You have to be able to impart it not only to experts that are in your own area, but also then to the lay people or people that aren't particularly specific in your area. And this is not only important within your own program, but then again beyond, when you're explaining what it is that you're doing. And then and you can apply that same skill set then to any other work that you're doing. Personal effectiveness and leadership, team working and leadership skills. So these are areas that are just quite broad transferable skills that you will part and parcel of your program. Or if you find that it is something that you haven't got in your program, or that there's a dearth in, this is then when you can identify, well, this is a need. I need to address this because I'm not getting it in the day-to-day. And then you can think about, well, how am I going to do that? And of course, when you're working with your RPDP, you're not only doing it alone, you're doing it in collaboration with your supervisor and with your research studies panel. So it's a broader conversation. And so in terms of identifying, that's where the RPDP is, because it'll kind of, under these different categories, you can look and decide and kind of say, well, where am I on this? We have a kind of a self-assessment sheet as well, because you could say to yourself, right, well, I need to know about that, but I don't need to really study it, for example. Say entrepreneurship, it might be something that you need to be aware that there is an entity called intellectual property. You need to be aware of copyright. You need to be aware of certain elements, but it's not that you need to be an expert in that area. Whereas there might be something, say, for example, if you wanted to do, if you see your trajectory in teaching or in the education sphere, then you say to yourself, well, actually, I need some formal training in this. So in that case, the other extreme is you might need to take a module in it. So that would be formal training. So each individual is going to their research program from completely different backgrounds. We're going, some people will be coming from a career. They've already had one career and they're looking to change over to something else. Others will be coming straight out of the university system, or to their undergraduate or their master's degree. So their needs will be different. So this is the key point of this is yours, and so it's for you, and you were the person that's going to benefit. So so you were asked about identifying the needs, and then how will they go about them? Well, as I say, the different ways of going about it is the experiential. You'll be learning by doing. The formal training, the discipline-specific training, research skills training, the methodologies, there'll be statistics, so all of those kind of formal trainings. And then what I'm always encouraging people to do is to undertake kind of unstructured things that aren't, that you don't sit in a classroom. Say, for example, journal clubs. Join a journal club if you have one in the school. So that could help communication skills. If there isn't a journal club, why don't you start one? You set it up. You start the networking. So therefore, you identify it, and then you find different ways of doing it. It's not always through training. It can be through lots of other, the kind of, as I say, unstructured methods of doing this.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned an awful lot of skills there, and I think it's really important that students realise that they will learn a lot of skills over the course of their PhD, over the duration of the 4 years, or if they're doing a research master's, maybe over a 2-year period, and how important it is to actually be able to articulate those skills and to record them, because as you also mentioned, there is a time frame between year 1 and year 4 that you will forget things that you've acquired and learned in year 1. And I think you've just reiterated how important it is to be able to record these activities and use that record for applying for jobs or for your academic career or whatever is going to take place afterwards. And I also think it's really important that you highlight how the students can gain skills. So they do the research discipline specific skills, if I understood you correctly, but there's also kind of transferable skills that they can acquire, and they can do that by engaging in journal clubs or by presenting their work, etc., by being part of a teamwork, etc. So there's actually a huge amount that the students can learn over the duration of the PhD.
And I suppose what I didn't refer to our own graduate studies suite of transferable skills, because we have we bring in external providers. We have our friend Hugh Kearns, who has been given a
from
whole
Australia, yeah.
Exactly. I mean that, and I mean the skills that when I've sat in on his trainings, they're great. The time management, for example, we all can do with improved time management skills. That's not unique to a research student. So he has the imposter syndrome. There's a whole range of things that he has discussed, and he's talked about specifically about PhD journey and helping the motivation, and so a lot of that softer things that'll just support the student. But then
absolutely,
we have our own trainings as well in terms of helping people through the stage transfer, and I'll get to that later. But so kind of have all those transferable skills trainings that are all up on our website too. So
and I believe there's a thesis bootcamp that graduate studies introduced this year, which seems to be very popular with the research students.
Excellent, yeah. For particularly, I suppose, for the later stage students, when starting to think, and I'm not saying it's not for the first, but I think the later stage students, it really is key to start them focusing on how to write in a particularly academic way, and because whether it's for publication or whether it's for the thesis, because each publishing house will have a different format and style, and so those, just to be aware of that and to know that there's a template that they need to follow, and that was great. That was news to me now when I wasn't aware of the rich suite of workshops and stuff, and I believe they do one-to-one individual training as well. So there's a real rich set of resources throughout the university for perhaps all aspects of the research program. But I think the thing is that what you're learning on the research program is applicable beyond that. So if you're going into a research world, publication is key. So and learning it early and learning good habits is very important. And again, as I say, writing all this down. Let's just bring it back to the RPDP.
Yes, keeping the record in the RPDP.
Keep the record. You've done this, and then you remember that you've done it as well. Because, as you say, as time goes by, you think, when we attend courses, we often think we'll never forget that. But if we put it down, and
yes, we're all only human.
We're all only human, exactly. And I mean, for the PhDs, it's 4 years. It's quite a long time.
Yes.
Students, or for the research master's students, 2 years. Still, it's a quicker trajectory, but they need to be writing it down because they're going to be out on the other side of it quicker than the PhD. So it's equally important for both sets of research students.
I know the RPDP is kind of made up of 3 particular sections or components. What kind of information is required on the actual form itself?
Okay, well, we prompt the form is unique to you, but it does have prompts on it to kind of help you structure it. So the research plan is fairly, it's self-explanatory. This will be the piece that you're done very closely with your PhD, your supervisor, and you'll talk about the methods that you're going to use, etc. Do we need ethics? It structures that conversation with your supervisor. You'll probably touch on these things anyway, but I think it helps you to think, okay, ethical considerations. Do I need to get any permissions for the work that I'm going to do, etc. And then thinking about the planning of the short-term goals and long-term goals, and write them down and working towards that thesis. The professional development piece is this, where you're talking about those skill sets that I talked about earlier, and identifying perhaps where it is that you need to go and what you're going to do, and writing it down and saying to yourself, right, well, I want to do that in a particular period of time. So giving yourself, again, short-term, long-term goals in that professional development. And then the final piece, the third piece, is the bit that's important for your stage transfer assessment, and that is the minutes of your research studies panel meeting. So the research studies panel meets, you're meant to be in the first trimester. So if anybody here is new, they really should have met with the research studies panel within that first trimester, or as soon after as is possible. And that has to be documented, and that has to be signed off by all the members, including yourself, and your supervisor will sign off on that. So that is the, so that's the kind of concrete piece that will be used for your stage transfer assessment, which will capture both the research and the professional development.
Okay, it's quite succinct, the information that you're capturing. And you mentioned the supervisor there, the supervisor of the research student. What role do they play in professional development planning, and what do they have to do with respect to the form itself?
Your supervisor is your academic mentor. They are not a career consultant, so it's not that again, this is your document. They will be there to support you, but they are key in terms of your research trajectory. They will be part of your research studies panel, and they may be able to provide advice based on their own experience, but they will have had a particular kind of career plan or career throughout their life. So it's not necessarily where you want to go. So I think what they are helpful is helping you perhaps have the conversation, but then signpost you to the career services, get you into the career network, so that you can talk about your own aptitudes and your own motivations there. I think it is important that they should talk to the supervisor around that, so that the supervisor, one of your people on your supervisor training was talking about the fact he likes to discuss this with his students early, so that has his antenna up if there's opportunities around. So if somebody wants to get into, say, the pharmaceutical world, that he may have connections, and if something arises, he can put them in contact with somebody in that area. But when it comes down to the actual responsibility, the only responsibility really that the supervisor has is that they will sign off. They will sign the minutes of those research studies panel meetings. So it is not their document, it's your document, but they are there to support you in that.
Great, thank you. We're nearly coming up to the end of our time, so I just two more quick questions, Emer, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Firstly, why is the RPDP an important component of the transfer assessment?
Well, the transfer assessment, this is where you go from stage 1 to stage 2. The purpose of the stage transfer assessment is that you are that you're staying focused, that you have the capability, the capacity to do the PhD, that you're going to get to the end. So it's there to kind of keep you focused, but it also is recognized by the fact, so when you go to you'll have to have produced, the research to date and your plan for the future. The supervisor will also give input into the stage transfer panel about their opinion of your progress, which will be independent. But the thing is that the university understands that they are developing a professional person. And therefore, that's why they've built it into it, so that the minutes of the most recent research studies panel meeting will be considered as part and parcel of the over kind of holistic view of your progress as you're going through it. So it's the university recognizing that your own development is a really key part of the PhD program. And so,
okay,
so
thanks. And finally, if any of our participants or any students are interested in finding out more about the RPDP, where can they go for information?
Well, Graduate Studies website, if you just put in RPDP and UCD, I think it'll get you there. But on the Graduate Studies website, we have a place for the RPDP. The document itself is a writable PDF. I would invite you to peruse it, but then there's also kind of the self-assessment sheet that I mentioned, a little video up there. It's a little bit out of date, so just when I was reviewing it for this, I realized I'm going to have to redo it, just because it's kind of iterative. We keep trying to improve it and make it a little bit easier. But so anyway, there's video and the website, but then also in each of your schools there is a graduate coordinator. They are there with responsibility for research students, and of course your supervisors. But in terms of the graduate studies, we have offered plenty of information there on our website.
That's brilliant. Listen, thank you so much, Emer.
I'm delighted.
Work in graduate studies, and I've learned more about the RPDP. So thank you very much for the session today. Ger, come in for a second before we do the chat questions.
Great, thank you, Janet, and thank you both, Emer and Janet, for I've learned more about the RPDP as well, indeed. So thank you both very much. We've stopped the recording now in a few seconds, and we can continue with the Q&A. But just to remind those of you that are there that our next Fireside Friday is going to be on Friday, the 12th of March at noon again. And this time we've Niamh O'Connor from the UCD Careers Network in the hot seat. And the topic is a postdoc right for me? And you know, as I said, the purpose of these sessions are to sort of put into slots what people ask in one-to-ones, and that is a very common question: is a postdoc right for me? And the person again that's going to be asking those questions is Owen, who you met last week as a graduate research student, and he will be asking Niamh the questions. So I hope you can join us for that, and we'll be here as well. And I just want to also thank you, Joanna and James from GSO in the background who do the technology, and Kelly from the UCD Careers Network. So we're going to stop the recording now and see you next week, and we'll stay on for Q&A, anybody who would like to. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ger.